They're definitely not the top of the trade market talk. They might not be the team with a big name trade target. Apart from maybe Kobe White, who really isn't the main trade target for me and not for a team like the Lakers in my opinion. But if you go through their team and look at the potential trade options on their team, there are quite a few to point to. Not simply one or two, but maybe up to 4 or 5 of them. Obviously at the top we can cross off Josh Giddey, just being signed to a new contract, and even if he were available, he wouldn't be a good fit. After that, we have Nikola Vucevic, maybe a good buyout market target, if the Lakers would trade DeAndre Ayton or move on from him. If they would have a center spot open, then maybe, but through the buyout market, not the trade market. After that, we have Zach Collins, and once again, maybe through the buyout market, even though he's probably less likely to be bought out, also not a trade target in my opinion. After that though, we have Patrick Williams, who I have talked about before. He actually is a really good fit. He fits the mold of what they should want and what their team does need in my opinion. A big 3-and-D wing that is a good 3-point shooter. This season shooting 39.5% from the 3-point line. On top of that is a big physical defender. No, maybe not a lockdown defender, but definitely is above average on defense. Also having a B+ grade in perimeter isolation defense. As a big 6'7", 235-pound wing. So definitely can take on multiple matchups on defense, can play off the ball offensively and knock down 3-point shots at a very high clip. I would point to him as a good trade target, if not for the contract that came with him. Though that might make him an interesting trade option. Again, we know the Lakers have a big priority on financial flexibility, and his contract would definitely hurt that, with him being under a 5-year, $90 million contract, of which 4 years and $72 million of it are left. Definitely not a good contract, isn't playing up to the level of that contract, even with the efficient 3-point shooting and the above average defense, isn't quite worth that contract. So I wouldn't look to trade actual value for it in return, but if the Bulls would give value to take on that contract, then we might have an actual conversation. If we would simply match it through a trade, offering the expiring contracts of both Vincent and Kleba, then take back Patrick Williams with draft compensation, maybe even up to a protected first-round draft pick, I might have some interest here. Again, we heard about the Lakers trying to get more first-round draft picks, even protected first-round draft picks, so maybe this could be a pathway for it. Maybe the protected first-round draft pick they own via Portland, currently protected 1 through 14, maybe a simply protected pick from the Bulls themselves. I might have some interest in doing that. Or maybe apart from a draft pick, combine him with a different player on their team that is a lot more valuable through a trade. Maybe like an Ayo Dosunmu for example, maybe an Isaac Okoro, Jaylen Smith, any one of them. At that point, we could probably add them with Patrick Williams and be able to get them with no additional draft compensation, or very minimal. So yes, terrible contract and definitely not playing up to the level of said contract, but if you are willing to take it on, it might come with some perks. Maybe a first-round draft pick, maybe multiple draft picks, maybe even a quality player in return with him. There are definitely options here if you're willing to take on Patrick Williams through a trade and simply be open to the idea of it. However, if Lakers are not, and up until this point we haven't heard about it, then maybe a different guy with a much better contract. And pointing down the list, we have Isaac Okoro, another guy I've talked about, and a guy that does fit the 3-and-D mold. Isn't as big as Patrick Williams, but is a better defender in my opinion. I've often compared him to a Derrick Jones Jr. a little bit. Not the best 3-point shooter, but a very defensive-minded player, an athletic player, a guy that can definitely take on tough matchups, and not to mention is still only 24 years old, albeit turning 25 in roughly a week from now. Regardless, I think he'd be a good trade target. I think he would fit their timeline around the Luka Doncic timeline, quote-unquote. Is a career 35% 3-point shooter, has only shot below 35% one time, that being his rookie year. On top of that, he has a 99 percentile matchup difficulty ranking this season, an A+ grade in perimeter isolation defense. I think if they would trade for him, and the only thing it would take to get him through a trade is simply matching his contract and then probably a second-round draft pick, maybe up to a future first-round draft pick swap, I would definitely have interest here. As if they would get him, they could theoretically slot him right into their starting lineup, right where Jake DeRavia or Marcus Smart is currently playing, giving them a better 3-and-D option than Marcus Smart, for example, a bit more reliable of a 3-point shooter, a bit more reliable of a defender than Jake DeRavia, kind of a better option for that 3-and-D mold, a guy that fits the timeline again and probably would be worth it. I'd point to him as a pretty good trade target that doesn't get talked about that much. Or after him, we have Jaylen Smith. Again, if they don't like DeAndre Ayton that much and really haven't liked the effort he's played with lately, which I definitely have not myself, if they don't view him as their long-term answer, which we've heard direct reports about, then maybe they could even look to trade Ayton for him, maybe as part of a salary dump, or trade Ayton to a different team, then try to get Jaylen Smith as a potential replacement, or to simply help fill the void. A 25-year-old power forward hybrid center, a guy that can play the 4 or the 5 depending on the matchup, a guy that can space the floor in a number of ways, not simply as a vertical threat, aka a lob threat, but as a floor spacing big option too, from the 3-point line. This season shooting about 34.5%, having multiple years above 35% from the 3-point line. Not only that, but is a good rim protector. This season blocking over 1 shot per game and actually around 2 of them per 36-minute average. On top of that is a great rebounder, grabbing over 12 rebounds per 36 this season. You know, might be a bit undersized, but that actually adds some potential benefits with him, being a bit more mobile on defense, more switchable on defense, able to protect the rim but also move his feet on the 3-point line. I definitely like him as a trade option. We've heard about the potential availability of him on the trade market, and I don't think it would take that much to get him. Simply match the contract and then throw in a future first-round draft pick swap, or combine him with a teammate and then maybe up to a protected first-round draft pick. If we're talking about an Ayo Dosunmu, for example, the next target I want to talk about, and probably the best trade target on their team, especially for a team like the Lakers. You know, if we're trying to add another scoring punch to our team, a guy that helps off the bench both offensively and defensively, Dosunmu would definitely fit the bill. I mean, we're talking about a guy this season averaging over 14 points per game in only 26 minutes per game, averaging 20 per 36. On top of that, dishing out 3.5 assists per game, and not to mention having some great shooting splits, near 50-40-90 shooting splits, 51% from the field, 44% from 3, and roughly 86% from the free throw line. Definitely an efficient offensive player, a guy that can play at the point guard, shooting guard, can be a playmaker, secondary playmaker, a primary scoring threat, off-ball player, catch and shoot guy, whatever you want him to do, he can fill that role for your team offensively. And then while he's not a lockdown defender per se, definitely is not a liability on defense, if even is a slight positive on defense in my opinion, is big enough to defend both shooting guards, some smaller wing players, but also quick enough to defend point guards. So I think he'd be a good piece of their bench unit, could play both with or without Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves on the court, could fit into their timeline going forward, is only 25, but actually turned 26 today, let me correct that, so happy birthday to him. I think he'd be a great fit for their current team, their future team, and even though you would have to pay him to retain him this summer, is currently under a 1-year contract. You know, with their cap space coming up and LeBron leaving and therefore opening up a lot of financial flexibility, I think he'd fit in pretty much every way possible on their team. So for a trade for him, you could trade for him individually, simply matching the contract and probably having to offer a protected first-round draft pick. Or again, if you'd want to combine him with a Patrick Williams, for example, maybe be able to trade for them and not have to give up a first-round draft pick. Maybe kind of get the draft compensation you get with Patrick Williams and put that toward this trade, aka simply letting them keep it and not have to give up any additional draft picks. That could be a different option. Or if you'd want to avoid Patrick Williams, combine Ayo with maybe Jaylen Smith or Isaac Okoro. At that point, you're definitely giving up a first-round draft pick, but again, plenty of options and therefore making them a great trade partner in my opinion. But those are only my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. How do you feel about the Bulls as a trade partner? How do you feel about the report from the Bulls reporter? How do you feel about the Herb Jones report? How do you feel about the report about Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt as a trade package? And simply, how do you feel about the Lakers trade market at this point and the possibility of them making a trade, either a good, bad, or no trade going forward? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one. And if you enjoyed the video, then I would greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching, and have a great day or night.